return to his home. He said even if it happened, what the Bible said, that everyone has to go back to his home for taxation. Was this true? And the other thing, it was Quirinius really a governor of Syria at this time. That's the two challenges that challenges even this taxation thing. They said even if such a taxation actually did occur, would every person have to return to his home? Ancient Latin inscription called the Titulus Ventus indicate that a census took place in Syria and Judea about AD 5 to 6, and that this was typical to those held throughout the Roman Empire from time of Augustus, that time, until the late 3rd century. Taxation decade happened all the time. Every few years they do it, and they found an inscription which is mean a stone, has some information in it. They found it in an area of Judea, and it said clearly that taxation actually happened during the time of Augustus, and that's happened. And this taxation happened in year 5 to 6 AD, which is the time when Jesus was born. Jesus, of course, was not born in year 0. You understand that, because people said, how come Jesus was born 5 to 6? Yeah, it was born because there's no such a thing called year 0. So he was born actually estimated between 5 and 6 AD. So in that time they found this inscription, confirmed that there's taxations happened. Other such evidence indicate that these procedures were widespread in the whole area concerning persons returning to their home city for taxation census, and an Egyptian papyrus dating from AD 104 report just such a practice. This rule was enforced as well. The two challenges from number 1 was agreed. Taxation happened, and they forced people to go to their hometown to have the taxation. It's not what happened here. I live in Contra Costa. What happened? Contra Costa has to send somebody to your home, count the people living in this house in this area only, and said, Contra Costa had those many people, and the median income like this, how many girls, how many boys, how many whatever in this area. So that time. So that time, the taxation happened during the area of Nazareth, and they forced him to return back home to do these things. Was Quirinius really a governor of Syria at this time? It is known that Quirinius was made governor by Syria by August in year AD 6. So it's matching the same time that Jesus was born. And then archaeological Sir William Ramsay discovered several inscriptions again that indicate that Quirinius was the governor of Syria on 2 occasions. The first time several years prior to the date, and within the cycle of taxation census mentions above, and an aerial taxation would be dated from 10 to 4. And he was a governor 2 times, one time in year 6 and the other time in year almost 10 to 4 BC before that. The fact sheets. Taxation census was fairly common procedure in the Roman Empire and did occur in Judea in particular. Persons were required to return to their home city in order to fulfill the requirement of the process. This procedure were apparently employed during the reign of Augustus, 37 BC to AD 14, placed it well within a general time frame of Jesus' birth. The date on the specific taxation recounted by Luke could very possibly have been 5 to 6 BC, which would also be of a service attempting to find more exact date for Jesus' birth. Then we move to certain things. It's called Johannan crucifixion's victim. People said, the punishment for crucifixion was not till the 15th centuries or something. People claim that. They said Roman didn't use the crucifix for that time of Jesus. That was a challenge that they said. The Roman did not use crucifix, and that's historically totally wrong, because Peter was crucified, Philip was crucified, and Jesus was crucified. Do we have an evidence for this? Yes. first example of this concern, an important discovery made in June 1968. What happened in 1968? You know, in Egypt, after we lost the war with Israel, Israel took the West Bank of Jordan, and it became a Jewish colony in that time. So they provided some important information about the nature of crucifixion, and it was exercised in the 1st century AD in Palestine. What is it? They were building a building in 1968, discovery of a graveyard under apartment building. They were trying to build an apartment building, and while they digging the foundation, they found a complete graveyard in this area. Has 35 body of Jews was found. One of them was named Yohanan and a victim of crucifixion. So they found marked the nail in his wrist and in his feet, and that dated to the 1st century till they discovered that the punishment of crucifixion was valid and was involved in that area, and that's proof that there is a crucifixion punishment in that time. So this accusation was not, and this is studied by Hebrew University pathologist Dr. N.H. Haas revealed some primary data regarding Johannes' skeleton. It said victims were often nailed to crosses through the feet or heels and through the wrist or lower arm area. Why they didn't put him here? There's the wrong picture. The old picture, they have like a nail here, and this is the wrong one. They said it has to be here or here, because they said this area is very weak, cannot hold the body and the cross. So people are gonna fall from the cross. Here you cannot handle the nail here, so they had to be in this wrist or down in the middle of the arm, because it's a bigger bone, so it can take the nail. It cannot have it in a palm here. So that guy confirmed this, and that was happening in the case of that Yohanan that they discovered, and that's normal way of Roman crucifixion. And then the vast majority of medical researchers agree that the positioning of the body required the victim to move upward and downward in order to alternatively breathe and rest. Because when they crucified them like this and all the body stretched, they have to breathe. And actually, Christ died in a cross because he was what?
Cardiac rupture.
What else? He could not breathe. Okay? He just suffocate. That's what happened. So that's the person trying hard to breathe for his life. So that's why he used all the power he has, to breathe. So if nothing can hold that body, it's gonna fall from the cross. That's why they have to do it this way, because he moved upward and downward. That's why they put, the good position in a cross, that they put a little piece of wood and let the foot rest on this, so he can move. Because if they put it right in a cross, he's gonna die soon, and they wouldn't like the victims to die that soon. So they put this piece of wood under their feet, so they last longer on the cross, so the pain will be more, so they got tortured more while they are in a cross. That's why they did up and down this. They said smashing the leg bones was used in a cross where a hasty death was desired, like what happened to the right and left thief. Because what happened, it was a Sabbath, and they cannot have anybody on a Sabbath, so that's why they would like them to die immediately. So they broke their legs, so all the blood fall down and they die immediately. And that's what happened to the right and left thieves. So that professor was explaining how cross was working. Okay. This is a very important piece that said in 1878, a marble slab measuring approximately 15 by 24 inches was discovered at Nazareth. Describing itself as an ordinance of Caesar, the message was a strict prohibition against the disturbing of graves. Scholars generally agree that it was issued by Claudius between AD 41-54. But that's important to us.
No one can steal the body or hide it.
Why?
There was
guards, I guess, but these guards themselves, like they said,
No.
So the disciples didn't steal the body and claim that Jesus rose?
No. This is a very important piece of info, by the way. Because you have to know what the Jewish tradition in this. Jewish tradition cannot touch a dead person. They became defiled. Unless your immediate family. That was in the law. You can read this in Leviticus between, I think, chapter 17 and 18 till 20, something like that. You cannot touch a corpse of a person, a dead person, unless he's your father, mother, sister, brother. That's the only one. Rather than that, if you touch any dead corpse, you're defiled and you have to go and offer a sacrifice for repentance. So, it was not accustomed for the Jew to go and, open a graveyard and touch bodies. But why Caesar did this and put it in, near Jerusalem, and they found this marble slab? Because there's a disturbance happened in Rome between Christians and Jews about the resurrection of Christ, that Christ rose from the dead. While the Jews said, no, the disciples stole the body. So there was a very confusion. So to finish the story, Caesar issued this creed and said, no one anymore, go and open the graveyard and touch the body, which is unnecessarily because nobody actually go and open graveyard and touch the body. But because to solve the conflict between Jews and Christian at that time in Rome, because it was a rule about it, he said this and they put it there, advising people not to open the graveyard, which is actually no one originally opened the graveyard because it was against the Jewish law and against the book of Leviticus. So that's actually one of the things. Of course, Shroud of Turinus, that's a very good thing that it's confirmed actually the crucifix of Christ. Do you know about this Shroud of Turin? How many of you knows about it? Okay. Shroud of Turin is actually, I visited the same church in Torino, and it's near, it's like 1 hour from Milan by train, and I went specifically to see this. Unfortunately, I didn't see it, but I see the room they have it in because they actually preserved the shroud in a place like has to be air conditioned all year round and no lights and nobody touched it, nobody even entered the room because of the bacteria. It has to be disinfected all the time and it has to be really, really preserved. They get it out from this church once every 10 years and put it outside for a few hours, and the tickets is very expensive to go just in a church just to watch this shroud. My niece went and she saw it and she told me, you need to be in a good health to do this because you're going to stay in a line like almost 2-3 kilometers outside the church to tour inside the church just to look at it and leave. It's a very big. I think people, give me 1 second, I'll show you something. How I forgot this. Actually, you're lucky because in a Good Friday we took this out and we put it in our setting for the Good Friday, and this is actually a real replica from the actual shroud.
Is it that big?
It is bigger than that.
It's bigger than that.
That's actually a smaller area of it. That is the replica of the thing. And here is the face of Christ in this area. You see it? this area.
This is the place.
Yeah. طبعا it's يعني the better one is the original one. It has different color, but this is it's actually the face of Christ. You see here, this area actually the black area, it happened because they were reserved in the silver box, and fire came in a church, and 2 charcoal fell in the silver box and left this mark from the silver box. But here is exactly how the shroud went. You see something amazing here, and that's the hands and also the face. And if you can put it this way, it might look better. Yeah. Look at the face. Yeah, you can hold it like that. Look at the face. The face, of course, has something here, and here's the hand right here. This is the fingers. You see it? And or maybe here too. Sorry, this is here. Yeah, here is the hand, and this is exactly the position for the Jewish, the way how the Jews bury a person. He has to be this way. And here's the face. The problem is that they could not solve something that you guys, of course, don't remember, or maybe you didn't, you consider it like an artifact now. That I didn't witness the photography, but that's because I understand that before the digital era, before the digital camera, how did we take pictures?
Negatives.
In a film, right? In a film. And what happened to this film if you expose it to the light?
Messed up.
It's burned immediately, right? And we take the picture, but what happened to picture in a film?
It burns on the film. It burns on the film.
Not only that, what is it related to the actual picture? It's negative. It's actually, you see the black, white, and white, black, and it is different. And you cannot draw a negative. But what happened, the negative is positive, right? So when you put it in another media, print it in another thing with a certain chemical, the real picture come out from that negative. So no one can actually print a negative. It came just only in a film. Now, of course, in Photoshop you can do it. They have certain apps that you can, any picture, do it as a negative, and you see how the negative looks like. So they discovered something amazing, that the picture here, it's a negative. It's not a positive.
That means it had a lot of light.
So it came from inside out. I know the guy who did analysis, one of the scientists. He actually invited him in Los Angeles in the diocese. I am intending to invite him. He used to be an atheist and now he's a good Christian. Actually, when he was explaining it, he was crying in tears and was very emotional because he said, I am atheist, I'm just, a scientist working in these things. And when he explained it, he said, that's not explainable because no one can draw any picture of a negative. But the negative came from something like a big ray or like X-ray came from in and out and imprinted the picture of Christ from inside to this shroud. And the picture, you see it in a shroud now that been sold many times. It's like a negative of this picture. They have mirrored it and do it that you see the actual picture. So this is what happened. Here, of course, you see marks of the blood from the crown.
On the hands too.
And in the hands, of course, that's a thorn nails. And then you see here all these bloods because of the thorn on Christ. And also in the feet down there, you will see the same thing. And what happened is this, something amazing. Another about this picture. They traced it, they found no ink. You can trace any ink. يعني احنا مثلا الشroud بتاعت the old Egyptian that we find it in the tombs in Egypt, you can analyze the ink. And the ink material is very well known. It's like a sticky material from some, like a glue from certain trees, and they add some pigment in it, and then give it the color, and then it became, or charcoal to become, black, and then you do it. When they analyzed the pictures of the shroud, they found no any source of any ink known on planet Earth. There's no even ink.
I mean blood.
Some people say
They
because Jesus
found
was covered in
remaining.
blood.
Yeah, they found some remaining of the blood. Of course, they found the blood, but they found no ink. So they said how this picture was printed. They couldn't find any explanation for the printed picture. The other thing, which is amazing, they said when anyone died and they wrapped him, immediately what happened? Your body started to decay.
Okay.
Then what happened? You see, like a lot of remaining start to be stuck with the thing, with the
Bacteria.
shroud, bacteria, stuff like that. They found no traces of any decay, bacteria or organ stayed in the shroud. Given that the guys explained that, he said that's mean the body stayed in this shroud within a very, very short time, and the body was not there anymore. That's why this is nothing stayed there for so long. And this is what happened. The other thing, they estimated the cost of this shroud, and it became almost 2,000 years or more. And from there, they found something amazing. Also, they found some pollens from a trees still in this shroud, and this pollen only grow in the area of Jerusalem. For some certain trees and certain planet there, only grow in the area of Palestine and Jerusalem. Still stuck in this thing. And of course, they found the blood, and then you see the face of Christ was very swollen because of the beating. It was beaten so bad, so that's why when you see even the actual picture, his face is very swollen from punching him in the face many times and all that. And also in the back of it, I think this, because it was folded, as far as I remember, but I don't remember anything, they said also from the web, I think in the web of how they webbed him so bad, there's some areas from the back of the shroud indicated that he was actually webbed so bad according to the Roman laws. And that's why one of the very big thing that we keep. And actually the organization that they did research in this asked the Vatican to give them bigger piece to continue even more stuff, and they said what we have is enough, and we can never, because they give him only I think 2 inch by 2 inch from the whole crowd to do the test, so they need bigger piece. So they said never gonna happen, and then we're gonna cut bigger piece and give it to you to continue doing more tests to give us more evidence. What we have is more than enough, and the Vatican of course refused to cut more from the shroud. But the guy did, and some scientists even there, they wrote a very, very nice book about the thing that when we hang it there. So you can fold it now, because we're gonna use it in a Good Friday as well. We put it also in a they have like something. Yeah, like that. So this is what happened. This is what we say. The negative image for a crucified man was a lot of wound on his back. A picture was not made of any known type of ink. No traces of any decomposition of the body. The body was wrapped for a very short period of time. A neutron flux affected the age of the shroud. Vatican refused to give more pieces from the shroud to have more tests.
I think last year, the shroud was everywhere on the news because they used like a new X-ray technology to test it, and it proved it that it was actually from the first century.
From the first century,
Like
yeah.
it was done. Like now
Yeah,
it's proven
yeah,
100%.
yeah. But as I said, يعني there's more to it, but the Vatican refused to cut any more pieces because they said we cannot do this no matter what. You know. Yes.
About the neutron flux and the age of it, basically what they're saying is, so the piece that they took when they dated it, it did actually say like carbon dating reflect like 600, 700 years. But the hilarious thing about this is that this would imply that whoever, if this is a fake or this was made by like let's say a monk in Italy 7 centuries ago, he would have had to invent literal photography about 4 centuries before anybody invented photography for him to make this fake.
You're right. Yeah, and as I said, the negative picture, no one even can draw it. You cannot draw a negative picture. Because, you know, I'm an expert in photography and I can tell you that no one ever
And this
can
level of
do
detail,
a negative picture.
and this level of
You cannot do that. So this is what happened. So how the negative picture imprinted from inside out, that was a big puzzle. There's some ancient historian. For example, we have a guy, his name Tacitus. And some people said Tacitus, whatever they called him. It's a Greek name anyways, a Latin name.
I just want to say hi.
Oh, hi, Bruno.
زي ما تسمي أبي.
Hi, Bruno.
شو البنات؟
Hey, what's up? عامل ايه؟ Good to see you. What's up?
That's you.
Thank you. What's up? هتكون في
Yes, here.
هناك؟
أها. لا أنا لا قلت لك تعرفني بدخل أبونا ما بتكلمش بس
يا بونا.
أنا قلت لك ممكن تروح لهم هناك وأنا أكمل هنا مش عارف أعمل إيه بس يعني حاول يعني حاليا.
Who is that? Cornelius Tacitus. He lived in AD 55 to 120. This is a very important guy. What happened? He was a Roman historian, lived through have a dozen of Roman emperors. How he lived and he witnessed like a dozen of Roman emperors. He has been called the greatest historian of ancient Rome, acknowledged among scholars for his integrity and essential goodness. He was a very honest historian. And then Tacitus recorded at least 1 references to Christ and 2 to early Christianity. Let us see what did he wrote. He wrote a book named The Annals, and that was year AD 115. He said, Christians were named after their founder, Christus, from the Latin name.
Sorry,
Okay, can you please? Whatever. Okay. Christians were named for their founder, Christus, Loa Christ, in Latin, and then he was put to death by the Roman procurator Pontius Pilate, also Latin, during the reign of Emperor Tiberius in that year, AD 14 to 37. Christ died almost year 33, 34. His death ended the superstition for a short time, but it broke out again, especially in Judea, where the teaching had its origin. His follower carried his doctrine to Rome. So that's one of the greatest historians, stated clearly that Christ, was crucified under Pontius Pilate, and he said that. Not only that, he said, when the great fire destroyed a large part of the city during the reign of Nero, 54 to 68, the emperor placed the blame on the Christians who lived in Rome. Tacitus reports that this group was hated for their abomination. Romans consider them, they are bad. These Christians were arrested after pleading guilty. They confessed their Christianity, and many were convicted for hatred for mankind. They were mocked and then tortured, including being nailed to crosses or burned too. Because of their action, the people had compassion actually on the Christian. Tacitus therefore concluded that such punishment were not for the public good, but were simply to glut one man's cruelty. And that's the source Gary Habermas, The Historical Jesus, and that's the name of the book I got this from. So we have testimony for a great historian stated that Christ was tortured, was died. Not only that, Suetonius, that he's a very good man too. He was the chief secretary of Emperor Hadrian, year 117 to 138. He had access to the imperial records because he worked with the emperor. And then writing about the same time as Tacitus, what did he say? He said, he has referenced this fact from different references. He said the first relate to expulsion of Jews from Rome, but also makes the claim. It was Christ who caused the Jew to make the uproar in Rome, apparently by his teaching. That's the thing I was talking to you about. There was a conflict between the Jews and Christians in Rome. That's why he said that was caused by Christ. The second reference is quite similar to the longer statement by Tacitus, including the use of the word mischievous to describe the group beliefs, and the term Christian to identify this group as a follower of teaching of Christ. Also Eusebius. Eusebius, we love him. Why we love Eusebius? They called him Josephus, but the actual name actually called Eusebius. Why we love Eusebius? Because he the one mentioned even the resurrection of Christ and the crucifixion. And also he is a very honest guy, and he's Jewish and he stayed Jewish. He didn't convert to Christianity. He's a Jewish historian. Flavius Josephus was born in year 37, like a few years after Christ's crucifixion, and or 38, and died in 97. So he witnessed the time of the disciple and the first church. And he was born into a priestly family and became a Pharisee at the age of 19. After surviving a battle against the Roman, he served a commander of Vespasian in Jerusalem. And then, after the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70, he moved to Rome, where he became a court historian for Emperor Vespasian. That's, he became like the court historian, the emperor actually recorded him to write the history. That's why he's very valuable. What did he wrote? Summary. He wrote a lot of books, but that's summary of his references. That Jesus was born as a wise and virtuous man, one recognized with his good conduct. He said very good things about Christ. He has made many disciples, both Jews and Gentiles. Pilate commanded him to die. So he confirmed that Pontius Pilate, made Christ to die. With crucifixion explicitly being mentioned at the mount. The disciple reported that Jesus had risen from the dead. So he reported that the disciples actually said that he was raised from the dead. And that was first century testimony outside the Bible. So when somebody said Christ was not crucified, was not risen, we have Jewish testimony for honest historians that they said that, and it's not from the Bible. Because when we talk about the Bible, it said your Bible is corrupted. So this is another history books, another historian confirming that they didn't say anything. They said that had appeared to them on the third day after his crucifixion. He's even said that disciples said that he was appeared to them after 3 days. Yeah, not only Christ was crucified, risen, and appeared to the disciples. That even from a historian outside the Bible. Consequently, the disciples continued to proclaim his teaching. He confirmed that disciples went out and preaching the gospel. Perhaps Jesus was the Messiah concerning whom the Old Testament prophets spoke and predicted wonders. We would add here 2 facts from Eusebius' earlier quotation as well, and add another. I don't know, maybe that he was the Messiah that the Old Testament, said about him. Jesus was the brother of James, and he called the Messiah by son. Brother of James, that James was his cousin. But as I said, in the culture in that area, they called the cousin brother. So that's why he said that about Christ. Again, similar to this fact that had that's also from Gary Habermas. So I have all the reference with these. Thales, it said the same thing. Yeah, all this, they are the most important historian, but I wouldn't like to bore you with more. But there's more historians here said the same exact thing, that Christ was crucified, was died, and rose, and the people said that, and the Christian even. I think Thales that also said something here. They had a book called Sishra in AD 52. This is the Christian gospel, or at least an account of the crucifixion was known in the Mediterranean region by the middle of the 1st century. This brings to mind the presence of Christian teaching in Rome, mentioned by Tacitus and by Suetonius. There was a widespread darkness in the land implied to have taken place during Jesus Christ. That confirmed, and there's darkness in the land. عارفين احنا قلنا كانت ظلمة من الساعة 6 للتاسعة. There was darkness from the 6th hour to the 9th hour. He confirmed that that's happened in his book. And that's outside the Bible again. All this is just historians recording events. And that showed us like what story was written in the Bible was true. Unbelievers offer rationalistic explanation for a certain Christian teaching or for supernatural claim not long after their initial proclamation. I said some people said it may be some scientific area. طبعا there's some government official, Pliny, that is very important. He wrote a lot of things about Christianity, and he's called Pliny the Younger. It's the same thing. He wrote, I think, 10 books. In his 10th book, in around the year 112, speaks about Christianity in the province of Bithynia and also provides some facts about Jesus. Summary of Pliny's writing: Christ was worshipped as a deity by early believers. يعني الناس كانت بتعبده as a ربنا في العصور في الأولانية. Pliny referred late in his letter to teaching of Jesus and his father as excessive superstition and contagious superstition, which is reminiscent of the word of both Tacitus and Suetonius. Jesus' ethical teaching are reflected in the oath taken by Christians never to be guilty of number of sins mentioned in the letter. Christians were very honest and very good people. And he said, we find probable reference of Christ's institution of communion at the Christians celebrate of love feast. He mentioned about communion in the church. And Pliny remarks about regathering to partake or ordinary food, about communion. The reference here elude of the accusation of the part of non-Christian that believers were suspected to ritual murder and drinking blood during this meeting. Again, it's confirming our view of communion as a subject to which Pliny is referring. You have to understand in early writing, Christians, they were afraid to talk about the body and the blood explicitly. They took it in a very vague way. Why? Because this is one of the crimes that some Romans accused Christians, that would bring a child during the ceremony and kill him and drink his blood and eat his body, referring to the body and the blood of Christ. That's why early fathers, when they talk about communion, they wouldn't like to mention the name, the body and the blood, except in a very few areas. They just take it communion, and everybody knows what communion is, because they wouldn't like people in that time to accuse Christians that we committing crime and just to bringing a child and kill him and drink his body, because that was forbidden by the Roman laws in that time. There also possible reference to Sunday worship in Pliny's statement that Christians met on a certain day concerning early Christianity. Talked about Sunday, and then he said the go and chant and worship. I don't like to read everything here because I don't like to bore you, but he says here all this fact that Christians go in the morning before they go to work, because Sunday in that time was not a day off, right? So people has work. So they said people go early before their work on that Sunday and worship and sit down and have ceremony and then go back to it afterward. So all this actually, and he said here about how Christ was crucified and tortured and about Jesus, all these things. طبعا في some others, Gentiles, but are not Jews. All the thing that we talk about, they are all Jews. Here they are Greeks and Romans and some Syrians. They talk about the whole thing, that Christ was crucified, tortured by Pontius Pilate, died, was buried, and rose in the third day and appeared to the disciples after the third day. So we have very overwhelming. By the way, I have references, very overwhelming. If I do this presentation, I can do it for hours and hours and hours. I just picked the most important pieces right and left. But the overwhelming evidence for all this is, it's amazing lately. And there's a lot of studies keep happening and more discovery about things from the 1st and 2nd century confirming the death, the crucifixion for Christ, his burial, and his resurrection, and appearing to the disciples. Yes, Bishop.
Yeah, I was just going to say there was more evidence too in the Library of Alexandria, which I like.
Of course, there's things disappeared in the Library of Alexandria, but what we have now is more than enough. And we have very overwhelming evidence. And here, even I can just scroll down, and you're gonna see Marbar Serapion, that he was a Syrian guy, and he was writing to his son a letter to tell him, follow Christ, that he was died and he was risen and he was a wise man, and so forth. They have tons of things here, about that, so we can have, as I said, even in my own iPad, I have tons of references, but of course we cannot make the presentation longer than that. But there's a lot of books and a lot of evidence for historians. Yes.
Also, part of the Library of Alexandria was when the Muslim conquest of Egypt happened, was the actual second destruction of the Library of Alexandria, because they went in there, they were commanded that anything that doesn't align with the Quran. Will be burned.
He told him something. Do you know what they told to Amr ibn al-As when he invaded Egypt? He said, and he told him, I found the library which has a lot of manuscripts and books. What would you like me to do with it? So he answered him with very stupid answers. He told him, you know what? If these things in the library are written in the Quran, so if it is written in the Quran will replace it. And if it is not written in the Quran, they can consider infidelity, so burn it anyways. So the historian said, the Library of Alexandria was inflamed for 6 months continued. They could not see the fire from the amount of manuscripts and the leather manuscript and codexes and all this stuff. And it said it was for 6 months continuously flaming, and they could not.
Wasn't the 6 months when it was back in Cleopatra's time, the first burning of the library?
No, that's the second time when Arab invasion. This is said it was 6 months completely. They could not see the fire because of the amount of codexes and manuscript and papyrus and all these kind of books, and it's gone. So and the whole world lost a lot of history. You have to understand the Library of Alexandria was not only for religious thing. It has everything. You have things about even astronomy, chemistry, music, philosophy, art, language, everything you can name it. So they said it's not only for theology or something like that. It has all kinds of